Hello everyone, this is the second part of the Zelda Unknown episode on Zora's Domain. However, before you watch any further, I highly recommend you watch the first part of the episode, as I and Michael will be referencing several elements from Zora history and evolution, which we analysed in the previous video. Without further ado, these are our thoughts and hopes for Zora's Domain, the ZORAS, and the river in Zelda U. From the limited gameplay footage and the sneak peek of the overworld map, one impression immediately hit me. Land-based Hyrule has never had this much water in any installment since the original Legend of Zelda, An Adventure of Link. Apart from the huge sea area in the east, we can say from the overworld map that Hyrule will consist of at least 4 wide and lengthy rivers, up to 20 lakes, and 2 of them, Lake Hylia to the south and the river delta in the central eastern section, are definitely the vastest land-based bodies of water ever included in the Zelda series. Moreover, several of them resemble the locations and form of the rivers and lakes found in the original Legend of Zelda. At the same time, one of the main rivers must be Zora's River, leading from the smaller lakes and ponds found in mountainous areas in the west and northeast. One of these higher placed bodies of water could be Zora's Domain, which has also been noted by, for instance, Guptendo.
They wrote, the medium-sized body of water in the east fits the Zora's Domain profile pretty well. It's located on higher terrain than all other bodies of water. This suggests that water flows from it. It also connects with all other rivers in the world, implying that it may also be the source of all water in Hyrule. This would also imply that Zora's Domain is located in more or less the same cardinal direction as it was in Ocarina of Time. The home of Zoras would then be placed to the east of Hyrule Field, but south from Death Mountain, which it does. Anyways, it will be interesting to see what Nintendo EAD3 will do with all these rivers and lakes in terms of gameplay mechanics. As we know, they strive to create the ultimate Zelda experience, and I hope they will make the rivers hazardous and challenging to cross, full of currents and water creatures. In other words, the game should reward planning in advance, such as obtaining the right equipment or having a boat or raft at your disposal to traverse the many water sections.
One more thing I wish for in Zelda Wii U is the possibility to sail or paddle the rivers from beginning to the end, without interruptions or barriers that were common and constantly present in both Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. From the first part of the episode, we could confirm that it is difficult to predict what incarnation or wherever the source will appear in Zelda Wii U, as it in the end comes down to the timeline placement of the game. As I mentioned in the base sea episode, with land and sea portions we might see the inclusion of 2 Zora types, sea and river. One of these could inhabit Zora's Domain. Still, the many stages and changes of Zora evolution or devolution in the series make it complicated and challenging to accurately claim that Zoras will return in Zelda Wii U after their absence in Skyward Sword.
Based on this experience, I will not even dare to give a specific timeline placement, but more imagine the gameplay possibilities the Sea Zoras and River Zoras could mark for Zelda Wii U. Imagine the vicious River Zoras found in A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds in a large, seamless 3D environment, being hazards in the rivers, attempting to break your boat, raft, or spit fireballs at you when you attempt swimming across the river, lake, or other waters. With these creatures around, there will be no need for other enemies, as you will have a terrible time just protecting yourself from these hostile monsters.
Many have pointed at references between Zelda Wii U and the original Legend of Zelda, and that the game may be a remake of the NES classic. Specifically, 2 details come in mind, and both of them, the opening scene and the large sections of the overworld map derived from the Game Awards presentation. If these speculations will turn out to be correct, then we might see River Zoras for the first time in a 3D environment. As to this point, all the 3D incarnations of the Zoras have been friendly. This could mark an interesting change of gameplay, where Zora's Domain and the rivers leading up to it could turn out hazardous to traverse. Though it is worth to mention at the same time, if Zelda Wii U takes place in the Downfall timeline, it is unlikely that we will see both of the Zora types, sea and river. Though I still hope for this to happen, even in the Downfall timeline.
The other possible placement for Zelda Wii U is a Skyward Sword sequel in the Unified timeline. There are 3 signs that point to this possibility. The time shift monsters in the E3 reveal, the sailcloth in the Game Awards presentation, and the fact that Link is once again right-handed, just like in Skyward Sword. If this would be the case, then the question will be, how far have the Pirellas evolved? Will they return? Or will we see the inclusion of the scrapped but proposed for Skyward Sword Phantom Zoras, or a return of the Gracious People Zoras from Ocarina of Time?
One other likely option is that Zelda Wii U will fill the massive gap between Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess in the child timeline. The most obvious evidence pointing at this was the appearance of the Great Bridge of Hylia from Twilight Princess in the Game Awards gameplay demonstration. In terms of the ZORAS, from Twilight Princess we know that from Ocarina of Time they did not drastically evolve, at least genetically. They remained a kingdom with descendants of the Bond dynasty as heads of state, but were at some point militarized as a result of a war. Perhaps Zelda Wii U will take place during this conflict, and we will find out the reason behind this militarization and how the incumbent monarch was involved.
The less probable but still possible placement is in the adult timeline. This is mainly due to a deceased but awoken by a forgotten hero Zora and Kokiri sages in Wind Waker. In this case, it is likely that the Ocarina of Time Zoras will appear, since Hyrule is obviously not flooded in Zelda Wii U. The Zora race could not under any circumstances have evolved into the bird-like Ritos. In terms of items, I believe we all hope for the return of one water-based item, namely the hookshot and its upgrades. The benefits of this iconic Zelda item stretches from latching or grappling on several objects from a distance, and then specifically objects made out of wood, thus opening up previously inaccessible areas. The only issue with the hookshot and Zelda U is that the item has not appeared in a new console installment since Wind Waker in 2003, and has more or less been replaced by the clawshot.
While the claw shot is less versatile in terms of latching to things, it has its advantages such as clinging onto grates, and in Twilight Princess, the item had the ability to move up or down along the claw shot's chain. Other items that may appear in the water areas of Zelda Wii U, but which we referenced in previous episodes, are the return of water bombs that may serve to open up hidden and blocked underwater paths, the ice arrows for manipulating the water element, the iron boots for sinking down in deeper water sections, the Zora flippers or Zora armor, and the fishing rod. I hope we will be able to fish at our own will when and where we desire. There should be fishing possibilities in all of Hyrule's many rivers and lakes, and catching larger lurks should also be rewarded.
Definitely, Conrad. I would love to see a mechanic similar to the one from Majora's Mask implemented in Zelda Wii U, where the area gradually opens up and covers more of its content, minigames, hidden secrets, and related side quests. This is needed, since my general impression of Zora provinces and the series is that they have been lacking more substantial content. The most important thing is that there is much more content to explore in the province after defeating the boss in the dungeon. In other words, Nintendo, give me incentives to remain in the province after I am done with killing the monsters in the temple, mainly speaking, involving and rewarding side quests.
Zelda Wii U is big, bigger than we might comprehend, and the same goes with the provinces. In this case, if Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto's statement is true, and the area surrounding Zora's domain in Zelda Wii U will be the size of the entire overworld in Twilight Princess, then they better include a larger Zora village or even town for that matter. What I wish for in this case is a unique and more extensive Zora town that may be located on the surface or underwater. A typical Atlantis reference. The Zora NPCs should be dynamic, and by that I do not mean that they should just swim around in circles. No, they should have their own day and time activities, houses and streets, and for the love of the Triforce Nintendo, give King Zora and his family the palace they deserve. Add to this a couple of buildings on the way up to the domain, a few replayable minigames, shops and side quests, and I can guarantee you that this iteration of Zora's domain will be the by far most memorable and involving within the series. One of the most pleasant surprises in Skyward Sword was the Ancient system, a water dungeon where the focal point is not tied to terrible gameplay mechanics and confusing and annoying dungeon designs. Water Temple, Great Bay Temple and Lake Bay Temple, I am talking about you. But what does the Ancient system have in common with Zora's domain in Zelda Wii U? Well, when you think about it, this dungeon might be the domain itself, since a waterfall just like the one outside Zora's domain in Ocarina of Time blocks the entrance to it. That is one reference, but more importantly is how well crafted this dungeon really was, with its not so much water-based puzzles, close to perfect pacing, two drastically different dungeon sections, Heaven and Hell, Life, Death, Yin Yang, clear references to Buddhism, and top it all with a good mini boss fight and an exceptional boss fight where none of them were water-based, and your opponent has the courage to hide his weak points from you. I do not need to state how this dungeon, as the only water dungeon from Skyward Sword, is considered to be one of the best in the series, both in terms of its design, pacing, and the final boss fight. But should they just recreate the Ancient system in Zelda Wii U? Both yes and no, since if there is one dungeon that has stood as a synonym for Zora's domain, and even more Zora's fountain, then it will be Jabu Jabu and his giant belly. And calm down before you try to tell me how terrible and tedious those two dungeons in Ocarina of Time and Oracle of Ages were. I agree, escort missions Princess Ruto, just to press down switches are never fun, and the water temple in Oracle of Ages, with its many required switching of water levels, was not even remotely entertaining. That is why I believe they should try to fix this dungeon design once and for all in Zelda Wii U, by avoiding infuriating escorts or water puzzles that make you want to turn off the game, but take inspiration and learn of the great mechanics and design choices they made when developing the Ancient system for Skyward Sword.
After all, Lord Jabu Jabu in Ocarina of Time had the most unique, at the same time gross dungeon setting in any Zelda game to date. And with Zelda Wii U's high quality visuals and details, you could just imagine how terrifying the enemies in this dungeon could be. Top this with an equally engaging boss fight as Baronade in Ocarina of Time, and I can tell you that you will love the Lord Deity's belly in Zelda Wii U. Another alternative for a dungeon in Zelda Wii U's Zora's domain could be a previously presented underwater palace of King Zora, where you would have to rely on Zora swimming skills to navigate your way. Overall, you could say Zora's domain as an area and the Zoras as a race have a great potential for improvement in Zelda Wii U. First and foremost, they should continue the tradition and proud history with evolutions, but at the same time get more dynamic and involved with Link's next adventure through NPCs that do more than just act like a fish. The ambition and goal for this area is to surpass the legendary levels of Death Mountain, by expanding on what works and give us for the first time a proper Zora town, and might be Nintendo's version of Atlantis. From the beautiful and breathtaking scenery of the waterfalls to the wild currents of Zora's River, we might be in for a province that is truly worthy of the title Home of Zoras.
Couldn't have put it better myself, Michael. If you enjoy Zelda videos just like this one and want to know more about Zelda Wii U or NX if you believe in anonymous gamer, then I highly recommend you to check out and subscribe to his channel and follow him on Twitter for more Zelda and other Nintendo related content. Once again, thank you so much to all of you who got through the by far most extensive episode of Zelda Unknown and the premiere of History Time. At the same time, I am glad to inform that the best is still to come and new collaborations are on the way. For the next episode of History Time, I will give you the two following choices. Do you want me to cover extensively the history of Hyrule, or do you want a history of the Metroid universe? Write down your answer in the comment section below, and as for Zelda Unknown,